Hello everybody and welcome to Whiz, your family-friendly podcast where we discuss D&D Onslaught, Dice Masters, HeroClix, and the other entertaining games made by Whiz Kids. I'm WizDad, and this is your friendly reminder that I'm here because I want to make a podcast that unites the Whiz Kids collective of games together. I wanted to be a central hub of useful Whiz Kids game information. And I will be your guide for navigating the competitive and casual scenes of the WizKids Triforce of gaming. It's Onslaught Wednesday. Today I will be talking about if Sellswords, with the addition of Akanke and the Ancient Construct, are truly competitive as a standalone faction. But first, I have a lot of news to cover in the WizKids Progress Report.
Kowalski, Progress Report.
So we've got a lot to cover here in the Progress Report. I ended up not recording the rest of the week last week after the match of Monday, and I didn't record Monday either, which is unfortunate, but you know, when you have a bunch of kids and a lot of things going on, and the weather last week threw a lot of things off, that's where you find yourself today on a Onslaught Wednesday as your first recording in a while. So first off, let's cover, as usual, the solicits. A lot of things have changed or shuffled around. As I mentioned last time, we know, at least for HeroClix, that next phase had been moved to March. I can't remember if we knew that Deadpool was also moved, but it is official now. The Deadpool Weapon X set is now in May, which was as kind of predicted. We knew that it was going to have to move. No way, they're both in March. It looked like there was just some big update to where they really identified when things are coming in, and things just had to be moved. It's unfortunate, but it happens. We also see out there that there are now confirmed dates for some of these iconics that we've been missing. We do know Harley Quinn Roses for Red is the 7th of February. We know Sherlock Holmes is the 14th of February, so that is coming up very quickly. Valentine's Day we get Sherlock Holmes. I guess that's a release date, so they obviously wanted Harley Quinn Roses for Red to come out a week before, so you had time to go pick it up. Remember, this is like the ship date, or the date it's supposed to get there, not, probably not the date you're picking it up, if that makes sense. And then Colossal Kong has a set date of March 6th, so we do know Colossal Kong, who has been delayed forever, it feels like. I think we heard about it originally in November, and now we're looking at March as the first time we get our hands on Colossal Kong. We do have out here on the solicits also, I don't know if it's been mentioned before, but we do have an OP kit in June already, listed as the X-Men High Rollers Monthly OP kit. I don't usually cover OP kits, but we do know the specifics of this one, and this one is, it will have Wolverine, Multiple Man, and then a Kitty Pryde with a new sculpt and dial for first place. And instead of like a legacy card like they've been doing with OP or objects, this time it comes with Multiple Man dice. Remember, one of the things they're really pushing with Deadpool and Weapon X is they're kind of doing new custom dice for certain characters or something like that, which I think is neat. It's pulling a little bit from the fact that maybe they're not printing as much Dice Masters, and they're like, hey, we got to do something with our dice machines. Let's make dice for HeroClix. So I'm all for it. That's fine. Perfectly A-okay with me. On the Onslaught front, let's celebrate a little bit. We've got a solicit out here. I will say that celebration should be short-lived because it's not till March, which is very unfortunate. Yes, that's right, the Sellswords 2 Golden Glory, which is the expansion we've been waiting for Sellswords, which I'm going to be talking about today in the Fishing with WizDad segment. We were hoping in January, didn't happen. I'm not surprised because as much as that one Facebook post said and people were emphasizing it, just didn't, without solicits, it's just not going out. So thankfully, it's currently set to release in March. We did see a little bit of a preview. Well, I don't really want to say preview, but there was an article on ICV2 that talks very, very briefly about it coming out. It comes out for pre-painted miniatures. They had a gallery with the product, but unfortunately they did not they didn't show anything but a Kanke, which we already know. So, kind of a bummer that we don't get to see, what the other three characters do. I would have liked to see both of them. Because remember, we have the Githyanki, we have, looks like a vampire type looking guy, and then we have an elf with a sword. Or a drow, or not really a drow, but we've got some interesting characters in addition to Kanke, which we already knew. So, great that we finally got some more information about it. My concern is that I was really hoping this would be legal for Adepticon. It still could be. One thing that Onslaught has never really identified or mentioned, as with HeroClix, there's a very set, specific legality list. Here is what is legal to play. And then they also list in there for other events, game elements are legal like a week after they come out, unless it's a con exclusive and it's like the next month that it comes, the first month after it comes out. Onslaught doesn't have anything like that, so I think it'll be interesting to see exactly when this comes out and whether it will be legal. Now, luckily, it's not a blind boosters, right? So, like, if it comes out 2 weeks before or a week before Adepticon, as long as your store carries it, you can just run and buy it. It's not like, oh, this crazy chase and HeroClix has come out, I have to go buy a bunch of boosters and I may still not get it, right? So I think Onslaught can operate on a much, as soon as it releases, it's legal, unless, of course, like, say it releases March 20th and Adepticon's the next day or 2 days later. It probably doesn't need to be legal, just in case there's something unbalanced or something that, people can't prepare for. They don't have enough time to prepare for that type of team. But either way, I'm super pumped about it. I love options. So having another faction, even though we can play Sellswords now, which we'll talk about soon, it'll be interesting to see. I'm eager to see how these 3 new characters work out. Just to have another faction, and we already have heard rumblings that more about Onslaught will be previewed at Adepticon. So I'm hoping, because I'm going to Adepticon, I will be there. I will cover as much as possible and get it out to you all as quickly as possible. I also, to wrap up the segment, have a few more things in the pipeline that I'm working on. I haven't had as much time to work on it as I wanted, but I'm hoping this week I can kind of get back to it. But I've got some YouTube videos, some shorts I want to create and work on, and get some more preparation leading up to Adepticon. As of right now, as I'm recording this, we're getting closer and closer to the Champion Clicks tournament. So when I record my episode on Friday for HeroClix, because there's a lot to talk about there, I'll talk a little bit more about Champion Clicks. I don't think we'll have any results by then, but I'll try to get some feedback from some of my friends that are down there, since I unfortunately can't make it, and we'll talk about that on Friday. But let's hop into the Fishing with WizDad. Who am I again? The WizDad segment. And let's talk about Sellswords and talk about, are they viable as is?
Get your gear, little man. We're going fishing. And I mean now.
So let's talk Sellswords. I had hoped by this point we would already have had the expansion and we could talk more. But one thing I haven't really dived into is viability of the Sellswords as a whole. We already know Sellswords are great being splashed into different teams, right? We know that there's a lot of... They do a lot of specific things that help offset negatives for other teams, right? So you've got Hengaku, who is a very good close range multi-attacker, very agile. Like he has pretty high movement, 5 movement, which is great. He is a really good damage dealer. So he is very nice to be able to splash onto different teams, like just someone who maybe all the attackers are like Red Wizards. Red Wizards are pretty solid to have Hengaku on. Harpers are okay as well. I do like the concept of Hengaku and Gribbleshanks. Kind of a 1-2 punch where you're delivering a lot of damage at once is really nice. Now, of course, obviously with the nerf to Chloe, it's not as good as they used to be, but definitely very, very solid. And then I think Molly is low-key much better than advertised. And we'll talk about that. But the one aspect that I haven't really talked about much is Akanke and the Construct. Where do those pieces fit in? What are some like variations of a team that could work? Before we really dive deep, because I'm going to go through each character again. You know, it's been a couple months since I really broke down each character. At least I won't go as deep as I used to, but I'll at least explain everything available from Sellswords. And let's talk about how the construct fits in, and then what variations of the construct do you put in there? Because remember, the construct could be different variations. I don't recall on the top of my head. I believe you have to pick which variation, like on your tournament sheet. So you can't just, each game change it to whichever one you want. I believe it has to be on your sheet. I may be wrong. If it didn't have to be on your sheet and you could just change it at will, well, then things get a little bit easier when team building comes into play. But I'm pretty confident you have to be able to, like, you have to put specifically which variation of the construct that you are doing. So just a reminder on how you build teams, for those that may be joining that aren't Onslaught familiar. Basically, when you're creating a roster, on the roster you can record 5 to 7 characters from their chosen faction and or Sellswords faction. This is a pool of characters a player must select from when forming a party during each scenario, and therefore must include at least one legal party. A legal party must include at least... a legal party is comprised of 5 characters, each with a different role. In addition, a non-Sellswords faction party can include a maximum of 1 Sellsword character, while a Sellswords faction party cannot include characters from any other faction. So, let's also keep in mind that Sellswords, the construct, takes up 2 slots when it comes to team building. And let me look into the variations of that. So looking here at the variable roles rule, that's a mouthful. It says here, a character with the variable role icon, which a construct does not have a role dictated by their character card. Instead, when this character is chosen during the choose characters step of setup, it must be assigned a variant card. That character has the role icon found on the variant card. Now, obviously, a player can't choose a variant card that has the same role as another character that has been chosen. You can't choose a character with a variable role icon if none of that character's variant cards can be chosen. So, now in the construct's case, there's 6 cards. You can't, have all 6 covered. But any future variable role characters we get, maybe they only have 2 to 3 cards. And you've already chosen all of their variant roles, then you can't choose that character, period. A character with the variable role icon has several corresponding variant cards. When a variant card is chosen for that character, it is placed below their character card. The character's role and class are dictated by the assigned variant card, and the abilities on the variant card share the dials found on the character card it is assigned to. Which abilities share which dials are noted on the variant card. So, looking into this further, it sounds like, yes, you just put the construct on your roster. You do not assign which roles, which makes sense, I guess, if you think about it. If you only put the healer construct in your party list for the tournament, it doesn't make sense that you're going to be limiting yourself. This does make the construct a little bit more playable, But that's interesting. That's very interesting. I didn't think of it from that standpoint. So let's talk a bit about the individual characters from the original Sellswords. And that is going to be Drom, Hengaku, Kithra, and good old Molly Fairhill. We'll start with Molly. Now, in my previous review of the sets, I did not think kindly of Molly, mostly because she didn't have any sort of healing. And honestly, Sellswords as a whole was lacking healing. But that at the time, right, you couldn't play Sellswords by themselves. So it wasn't a big to-do. Molly is pretty standard. She's a cleric, +5 to hit, 2 damage for standard. Her melee, her range is 1 enemy at range 2 to 3, +5 to hit, 1 damage. So not a great range attacker, but she does deal divine damage, which is relevant for certain things. She gains XP after you use a cooldown ability. Cool. Now, both cooldown abilities have fairly short cooldowns. It's just a 3-turn cooldown. She's got Ogma's Blessing, which is a bonus action. Gain Blessings of Knowledge, which is +1 to damage or +3 to defense, which is pretty good. Like, that's good. Either she deals more damage or she goes up to a 19 defense starting, because she starts on a 16, 4 movement, 16 defense, 9 health at the top. So she can play the role of the tank. If you need her to do more damage, she could be doing melee for 3 or range for 2. But that's solid for a first cooldown ability. The second one is one that we haven't seen a lot of use currently, but as we get more and more characters, ones that deal burning damage, ones that deal poison, like there's so many effects and conditions in this game. So she has Dispel Magic. It's a bonus action once again, so which is great. Both of her cooldowns are bonus. 1 mini at range 0 to 1, 3-turn cooldown. Remove 1 condition token from that mini. And it is not just, obviously, for you. It could also be for them. So that's very good. It's not healing. That stinks. But don't downplay, like I did during the reviews. I downplayed how good Dispel Magic is. The more conditions we're getting, the better it is. The better this gets. Her reaction is a little unusual. It's called Read Thoughts. After initiative cards are assigned, choose 2 enemy initiative cards and look at them. You may exchange those cards. This could be really good. Now, it's obviously not as good as Nerth. Yeah, not as good as Nerth's, like, oh, you get to take the 1 card. But you definitely end up, like, I find myself when I'm playing Onslaught, depending on the scenario, you probably know later in the game who your opponent's going to put with the lowest priority, or like going first on their team. You will know that. It's probably someone who is racing to an objective, who's surrounded by everyone, and they want to at least get 1 more turn out of them. So this is definitely an ability you don't try to use first turn, unless the scenario is a little wonky. This is definitely one that I think is useful, but like very useful. Middle of the games, you could, if as a good Onslaught player, you're going to be able to identify, hey, this is probably who they're putting first. And then you can probably ascertain these are probably the 2 players or characters that are going last or next to last. And so doing that, you could choose their 2 cards, and then if you want, swap them. I think it's really good. It's a 4-turn cooldown, so you could feasibly do it like turn 1, turn 2, and then expect to maybe have it get back to you near the end. I'm not usually good at determining this is when I, use this ability. Luckily, it's not a one go. Like, it's not a one-time thing. You can use it again later. After 4 turns, obviously. As far as her level up abilities, Potent Casting heals her, and then she gets a +1 to her range for damage purposes. And then the other one is Knowledge of the Ages, which is a one-time ability. After initiative cards are assigned, choose 1 enemy initiative card and look at it. You may exchange it with your initiative card. So that's kind of a Nerith first turn. If you're not first player, that turn, you could just take their first player card effectively. So I actually really like Molly now. She has definitely moved up my list of Sellswords, and kind of overall, if I were to make a tier list, which would be kind of fun, I think, to do a video of all the Onslaught pieces to make a tier list, Molly I think would be up there a little bit. I do like her a lot. Then if we move on to, we already talked about him a little bit. Let's talk about Hengaku. Hengaku, Katana, +7 to hit, 2 damage, range, 1 enemy at range 2, +5 to hit, 1 damage. 1 with your blade, your melee ignores all damage reduction. That's probably one ability that'll continue to grow. There are some, obviously, damage reduction out there. There's not a ton, but that could change, right? As the game continues to grow, we get more characters with damage reduction. That obviously is good. 5 movement, 14 defense, 9 health. Gain 1 XP after an adjacent enemy character is defeated. I find that's harder to pull off than you think. Hengaku's usually leveling up just by hitting people. So the first cooldown ability, bonus action Death Strike, you just make a melee attack. So you could double up on your melee attacks effectively because it is a bonus action. Kensei Shot is very solid. Standard action, 4-turn cooldown. 1 enemy at range 2 to 4, +7 to hit for 3 damage. Solid. If you don't want to do 1 from range, you could do 3. And then the Agile Parry I like also. After you're declared the target of an attack by an adjacent enemy, gain +3 against that attack. It's solid. It's not amazing because he's only a 14. Taking him to a 17 can still get hit pretty decently, right? Like if you're going against an opposing Hengaku who has a +7 to hit, that means they need to roll a 10 or higher on 2d20s. The probability of that is pretty decent, right? But it's better than nothing. The level up abilities, you gain 1+ damage with your melee. Hey, 3 damage melee and then Death Strike, so you're dishing out 6 damage, potentially. I like that. That's the Sharpening the Blade level up ability. And then Unerring Accuracy is you heal 2, and then you have a free action that's once per game. After you miss with your attack, reroll your attack dice, you must use the new result. I'm probably going with Sharpening the Blade most of the time. Now, Hengaku is your melee dealer. If that wasn't clear, I didn't mention it a second ago, but Molly is listed as your tactician. So she's not a healer, thank goodness, because she literally does not heal. She is a tactician. And I believe all of these Sellswords have different roles. There's no doubling down on any of the Sellswords roles. Like, for example, Drom here. Drom is a hybrid. I believe that's right. Unless I have... You know what? The melee and the hybrid symbol are almost too close together on what they look like. So I get them a little confused. Let's see real quick. Yeah, melee damage and yeah, hybrid. He is the hybrid guy, which is interesting because I don't consider him hybrid because he doesn't have range. I consider him to be more of almost a vanguard, if that makes sense. Like, he feels like that. To me, it almost feels like... How should I phrase it? It feels almost like Kithra should be the hybrid, because she hits close and she throws hammers. But that's neither here nor there. So going back to Drom, Drom, once again, the big turtle guy. He is a hybrid fighter. Spite Gauntlet. Enemy at range 1, +4 to hit, 2 damage. Cool. He does not have a ranged ability, which is why, once again, I'm not sure about the hybrid part of it. Tavern Brawler. At the end of your activation, adjacent enemies who are slowed or rooted suffer 1 damage. That's okay. He gets 1 XP after you are attacked by an enemy. Really sounds like what a Vanguard would want. His first cooldown ability is Grapple. Standard, 1 enemy at range 1, +6 to hit, 2 damage. If hit, the target is rooted. And then thus, subsequently, at the end of your turn, they take 1 more damage because of Tavern Brawler. Makes sense. Hill Rune. Gain the Hill Rune, you suffer half damage, rounded down from all physical attacks. Which, funny enough, I guess Hengaku would get through because you are reducing it reducing the heal rune. The heal rune reduces the damage, so I guess Hingaku kind of gets through that. Though as a Vanguard, I guess, well, he's not a Vanguard, but Drom does only have 14 when it comes to AC. He is slow at, well, he's okay at 4 movement, but he does have 11 hit points, or health, so he is a beefy turtle guy. He does have the Cloud Rune reaction after you're declared the target of an attack. Choose an adjacent non-attacking enemy to be the new target. And then Storm Rune, Fire Rune. Storm Rune just helps when you're resolving attack. That lets you use multiple d20s. Use the lowest result when applying that roll. That's against you, so that helps against people that are attacking you. In the Fire Rune, you heal twice, and then people hit by your melee gain slowed. You're taking the Fire Rune like a majority of the time. It just, a majority of the time you're taking that. So he's kind of your guy you want in the middle, even though he's going to take a lot of hits because his AC isn't amazing. But that's okay, right? Like, whenever he gets attacked, he gets some more XP. So that's great. And then lastly, before we jump to the Construct and Akanke, we've got Kithra Coalforge, which is your ranged attacker. I know a paladin or range. Well, think of it as like from Diablo or something. She's throwing hammers. Warhammer, +5 to hit is your melee, 2 damage. Throwing hammer, range 2 to 3, +5 to hit, 3 damage. So she deals more damage by throwing a hammer, which is awesome. 16 defense, 10 health, only 3 movement, but she's got the range to make up for it. The downside is when she is bloodied, her range attack goes down to 2 damage. So she becomes kind of a target for your opponent. First cooldown is Inflict Wounds. One enemy at range 1, +2 to hit, 4 damage. On a miss, this ability is not once per game. So just dealing straight 4 damage is okay. Not bad at all. Crown of Madness. One enemy at range 1 to 5, +5 to hit. If hit, the target makes a close or ranged attack against a target of your choice. So kind of a little bit of a Sedona kind of mind control aspect. You can have that person make it closer ranged against, whoever. And then she has Hellish Rebuke, which we know after she's dealt damage, she deals equal back to the attacker. That's always a threat. Hellish Rebuke, you kind of have to second guess yourself attacking someone with Hellish Rebuke. Usually someone with Hellish Rebuke, you either want to use one person to just kind of tank the rebuke back, or you slowly whittle down that character to where, like, oh, they're only dealing 1 damage, 2 damage with Hellish Rebuke. So you kind of don't go full force on someone with Hellish Rebuke. Aura of Hate is interesting. That's her level up ability. Friendly characters at range 0 to 2 gain +2 to hit. That's solid. Dreadful Aspect. I don't know if I like that one. Gain Dreadful Aspects. Enemies can't move adjacent to you or end their activation adjacent to you. So it's a bonus action and once per game. I'm not sure if I like that one, but oh well. You're probably playing her because of the way Sellswords work. As of right now, we have 5 characters in the Construct. So let's talk about Akanke and the Construct, and then let's talk about, is the team good enough? Akanke, we've talked about not too long ago, is the healer and is kind of just an okay healer. Limited healing, which is, I just said it, it's okay. Nothing to write home about. Akanke is the Alchemist. Unarmed, one enemy at range 1, +2 to hit, 1 damage. Alchemist Fire, one enemy at range 2 to 5, +5 to hit. Does has a splash of 1 and deals 1 damage. Critical target gains burning. Obviously, Akanke has the whole Ancient Construct, ignores the 1 sellsword per party. That doesn't apply to this. After you cause a character to gain a condition token, gain 1 XP. Solid. Now, Akanke does have a 2-charge healing elixir, so Akanke can do it twice. 1 friendly at range 0 to 1, heal 4. This can affect constructs. I guess that's better than I think it is. I just haven't done the math in my head of in my head I'm like, is this better? Like having 2 charges of healing elixir with no cooldown versus something like Chloe, who has healing on a short cooldown. And I think it really depends on, I mean, I guess it just depends on the game, right? The one you're going against. Like if I look at, this is a good exercise, I guess. If I'm thinking of some healers, right? So for someone like, let's see, what's another healer that I'm thinking of besides just Chloe? I'm blanking on a second. You've got Mistral. So like Mistral's a cleric, one enemy at range 0 to 5, heal 5, but a 5-turn cooldown. Well, your characters might not make it. Like, you may not get 5 more rounds or 4 more rounds, depending on the matchup. Chloe heals 2, but she has a 2-turn cooldown. So if you think about it, Akanke's technically healing 8, because 4 both times. You would have to go through 2, then 2, then 2, then 2. So, they're probably equal. Okay, you know what? I'm now warming up to the concept of Akanke as a healer. 2 charge healing with little to no cooldown actually is pretty solid. I didn't think that way at first, but you know what? I'm back on board. So besides the healing, that isn't all that Akanke does. Akanke also has Elixir of Boldness. This is a bonus action. It's got 3 charges. One enemy at range 0 to 1 to gain Boldness, which is +1 movement and +2 to hit with all attacks. Solid. It's a bonus action. I don't hate it. And then the Take Shelter reaction, when you're about to suffer damage, an adjacent friendly character suffers some damage again. Depending on who that is, you can reroute to Drom. Takes the damage. I guess that's a good question. If you're suffering the damage, you're not technically being attacked, but you are taking the damage. So I guess that's a question of, would Drom get the XP? Because he's not being attacked, but he's taking the damage. I would assume he wouldn't, but we'll see. Level up for Akanke. Add +1 charges to each of your ability. It's super solid. You probably take that a majority of the time. However, Alchemical Savant, after you hit a target with your range, it gains Burning. Burning's good. Suffer 1 damage at the start of your activation. I think Akanke pretty much makes it on every Sellsword only team. Just for the fact that you're able to kind of get those healings off pretty well. Now, it's not a ranged healing. Let's be fair here. It's a 0 to 1. Akanke can move 4. It's got a defense of 15, 9 health. So, you know, Akanke has to get up there. It's not like you're throwing a healing potion like you're playing Baldur's Gate or something. But I like Akanke. I think solid figure. It's probably... Akanke probably makes Sellswords playable solo, because they don't have healing otherwise. So that's great. If you wanted to just field a team without even considering the construct, I think you could, of just Akanke, because that's 5. Akanke, Hagaku, Kithra, and then Drom, and then Molly. I think that is a solid team. Is it the best? Probably not, because you have more options with Harpers and more options with Zentarum. Probably not. Like, I don't think it's better, but like, I would try to run that team just because who wants to play Harpers all day? But one thing I am interested in is the construct. What does the construct give us that is different? One thing I do want to note is, you know, I mentioned previously that we got the preview of Akanke. Because remember, Akanke came out in the Ancient Construct Storyline OP kit and is now being released as a character you could get in the Sellswords expansion. I am looking at both cards just to see if there's something different, because the Akanke from the OP kit does have a little 2 symbol next to it. Now I assume nothing's changed on the cards. It looks like everything is the same. So still range 0 to 1, heal 4. So nothing has changed. It's just the storyline version has a little 2 symbol under the healing, which is interesting. I wonder why. There's that difference there. So let's talk Ancient Construct, the metal elephant in the room. Is it good enough? So keep in mind the construct does take 2 slots. Now it activates twice, but it takes 2 slots, which can be a big bummer depending. Man, so let's talk about just the Ancient Construct on its own. It has the Smash ability, 1 enemy at range 1, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. Chain Fist, range 2 to 4, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. It's got 14 defense, 10 health, but remember it flips cards. Can't be healed, but you're by other minis and can't level up, but Akanke kind of helps with that, right? Akanke can heal the Ancient Construct, so Akanke is a requirement if you're playing Ancient Construct. Unless you want to go healer version, but we can talk about the Apothecary variant. You gain 1 XP at the end of your activation. Now remember, the way that this works, the way that the construct works, is that it can't level up, so it has no level up abilities, but all of its variant abilities use that XP to enhance what it can do. So the 2 standard abilities it has is Empowered Rend, standard, 2-turn cooldown, 1 enemy at range 1 to 2, plus 5 to hit, 3 damage. Then it also has Self-Repair, and that's just heal 4. Takes a standard and a movement. It's once per game. And then finally it has Deflect Attack. When you are damaged, reduce the damage by 1. That is on the full Ancient Construct. When it goes to the bloodied version of the Ancient Construct, things get a little different. It still does the same amount of damage with the Smash and Chain Fist. It gets 2 XP at the end of the activation instead. And when you are damaged you can use the Deflect Attack. Now it goes up to 3, reducing the damage by 2. It still has Self-Repair and Empowering Rend, but this time Self-Repair is 6, and the Empowering Rend is plus 8 to hit, 3 damage. So remember, the way that it works is that Ancient Construct counts as 2 characters for activation purposes, so it acts twice. When you take out the initial 10 hit points, it flips over to the other side, and it now only acts on 1 activation. Effectively, they've killed, in broad sense, they've killed 1 Ancient Construct, and now you're down to the second one. But you use the 1 card for both activations. It's a little confusing, but I won't bore you with that, because we're already talking quite a bit about this. So let's talk about the variants, the variant cards. So you have the Grappler, plus 5 hits. Basically, remember, each of these cards uses the Empowering Rend dial instead, the cooldown dial, instead of Empowering Rend. And it's a may use. So I believe you can use Empowering Rend or Self-Repair, or these other 2 abilities. But they share cooldown. So if you use Empowering Rend, well, you can't use Spinning Strike for the Grappler until the cooldown dial is fixed. So all 6, there are only 6, right? All 6 rolls, all 6 rolls, there is a variant 4. Sellswords does not have a Vanguard, and I think that's it. Because we have Akanke for healing, we have Molly for tactician, we have Drom for hybrid, Hengaku for melee, and Kithra for range. So the construct really could fit in as a Vanguard. That's one of the options. Or it could take one of those other characters. And it would have to, in order to fit, it actually would have to take off two characters if you're really thinking about it. So let's I don't know if I want to go through each card. These are on the Discord, but just keep in mind that the cards themselves, the variant cards, they do very interesting things to fit the roles. Let's just identify what roles we're likely putting the construct in, right? Probably not doing Apothecary, but Apothecary is Mending Ray, would replace Empowering Rend. Bonus action, 3-turn cooldown. 1 friendly at range 1 to 3, heal 1. You may spend any amount of XP to increase the healing by the amount of XP plus 1. So, makes sense. And then you have Shutdown. This replaces self-repair. Set your hit points to maximum and gain Rooted and Weakened. Interesting. So you got kind of a healing robot. Keep in mind, every time you heal, you would get more XP for doing that, but it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Not sure I like that. I think I would want to keep a Conke, because I think the healing there is better. And a Conke could do a little bit more other things. Now, obviously, you still got your, Chain Fist and your Smash and Empowering Rend and Self-Repair. With Self-Repair, I don't know if it's necessary to have the shutdown from the Apothecary. So I'm not sure about that. It does have the redirect reaction. When you suffer damage, you may spend any amount of XP to reduce the damage by that amount. And then the attacker takes damage equal to half of the amount reduced. So you take 4 damage, you decide to reduce it to 2, well then they'll take 1 back to them. So, first off, I think I prefer a Conke over the healer version of the construct. Let's look at Tactician. Now, Tactician would replace Molly on the team. Let's ignore that you'd replace someone else. Let's just say, okay, is Molly or the Mage construct better? And remember, keep in mind, I think the person who would do best with this kind of Sellswords team is someone who has these type of variations already built in. Like, they have party lists in mind going into the tournaments for almost every scenario. Just knowing, or matchups in mind for if you're going against Zentarum or Harpers, or etc. So the Mage, instead of Empowering Rend, it could use Orb Blast when enemy at range 2 to 4 plus 6 to hit, plus 10 if you are bloodied. Neat. 2 damage, and you may spend any amount of XP to move the target away from you that many squares. Interesting. And then Refraction replaces Self-Repair. A 4 square cone. That's huge. Plus 5 to hit, 2 damage, and you move the target up to 2 spaces. This attack does not target friendly characters. I like that. Board manipulation is big. Like, big. And it says you may move the target. I believe that still would activate some things like opportunity attack. It may or may not, because you may move the target after an adjacent enemy moves and is no longer adjacent. So I think that should activate opportunity attacks, which is interesting. So the Mage version of the construct is very much manipulating the board. Refraction is once per game, but Orb Blast is every 2 turns, which effectively is every second turn. So you do it turn 1, cooldown goes to 1, next turn cooldown is back. So turn 1, turn 3, turn 5, stuff like that. Round 1, 3, and 5. Now keep in mind, this construct is going twice a round, right? And you only do cooldowns at the end of the round. So something to keep in mind. But I do like the Mage up. Like, I think the Mage is definitely better than Apothecary. Don't know if it's better than Molly. That one I think I would leave to tournament selection. Like, scenario is, like, if you're on, to put it frankly, if you're on a capture the flag or like control point type scenario, I think the Mage construct is great in there because you can move enemies around, right? You can win a game by moving them off a control point and then moving your people in, especially if the construct is a 2x2. So I like the mage. I think, if you're bringing the construct, I think you do build a party that has the mage in it for maybe those control points or something that relies on people grouping up, so that way you could kind of manipulate the board a bit, or like move them into danger zones that might be on the map, or move them next to an enemy of some sort. There's a lot you could do with that. Next up, let's talk about the melee damage person. So that would replace Hengaku. This is the soldier. You have giant slash, one enemy at range 1 to 2, +4 to hit, 3 damage. When you declare this attack, you may spend XP to increase the damage by 1 for each XP spent. So you could take that up to 4, 5, 6. There's no limit. It's just how much XP you have. So that's solid. Then you have Whirlwind. Target your space, +4 to hit, splash of 1. So remember, you're a 2x2, so that's what, 12 squares? 3 damage, +4 to hit, splash of 1, 3 damage. When you declare this, you may spend XP to increase the splash range by 1 for each XP spent. I think that's interesting. It's once per game effect. All of these that are in the self-repair field are once per game effect. I think it's interesting. The concern with that is I don't know how often you're pulling that off, simply because it does not say it doesn't affect friendly characters. So when you're spinning around, you're targeting your space, +4 the hit, you're hitting everybody. So you might hit your own people, and with a big guy like that, it's kind of more likely. So Hengaku probably is better than the soldier variant. I would probably much rather have Hengaku in that case. You have the ranged, which is going to be replacing Kithra at least. Giant bolts. Target one enemy at range 2 to 3, +5 to hit, 3 damage. You may spend XP to increase the maximum range by the amount. That's okay, right? That's all right. It's not a lot of range, but Kithra doesn't have a lot of range either. You deal as much damage as Kithra does. It's okay. I think it's fine. Let's see if the barrage is better. Target one enemy at range 2 to 5, +7 to hit, 2 damage. When you declare this attack, you may spend XP to add 1 target for each 2 XP spent. Each target is a separate attack. So, keep in mind, all these self-repair ones take a standard and a move action. That one is interesting. It definitely feels better for a PvP type scenario. But, man, 2 XP... The one barometer you would want to test is how frequently do each of these variants get XP. I'm not sure... Like, you obviously get the 1 at the end of your activation. So that means you're effectively getting 2 a turn because you activate twice. That's alright, I guess. I would say Arbalest is really up there. You probably want Kithra and one of the other Sellswords. That's probably what I'm thinking. Last but not least, we have... Well, we'll talk about the Defender in a second. Last but not least, we have Drom. Well, the hybrid, who would be replacing Drom. That's the Grappler. Spinning Strike, target your space, +5 to hit, splash, 2 damage. When you declare the attack, you may spend 2 XP. If you do, any mini hit by this attack gains slowed and weakened. Man, that's a bummer, because that would really work well with Drom. Funny enough. But slowed and weakened, solid. Remember, you're spinning for a decent amount. You only have to use 2 XP once, so it's not like you're stacking it like with Barrage. So that's okay. 3-turn cooldown, alright. And then Surge. Friendly characters at range 1 to 3 may each move up to half their movement. If you are bloodied, they may move up to their full movement. Ooh. Huh. And it's rounded down. Let's talk about that one. So, if you were to look at the Sellswords as a whole and rank top to bottom, Drom feels like one of the bottom tiers. Not that he's bad, but out of the 5, not counting the construct, he just isn't as good as the other 3 at times. the key thing in Onslaught that I've found is that movement is king in a lot of instances. Being able to have all of your characters move half their movement as a standard and move action, that could be good, I think, right? Depending on the circumstances. Setting things up to where you could just move everyone half their movement, so 2 to 3. If you have everyone bunched up, that could be good, but that might be one of those like golden ticket scenarios, right? Something you dream of and it may not work. So that one I think is iffy. I might like that one more than Drum. Now let's talk about Vanguard. This is the one that doesn't have a replacement. You don't have to replace anybody, even though you're taking 2 of them out. Shield charge, move up to your speed, spending any amount of XP to move that many extra spaces. Interesting. And make an attack against an adjacent target with +2 to hit and 1 damage. So that could give you a little bit more movement if you really wanted it, because the bad thing about the Ancient Construct, it is very slow. It is 3 movement. It is a 2x2, so it kind of gets a little bit of a benefit for that. But it is 3 movement. But using XP to move further is interesting. 3-turn cooldown. I think all of these are. No, Orb is 2. Yeah, Orb is the only one that's different. And then Smash, the once per game. 1 enemy at range 1 to 2, +5 to hit, 2 damage, and the target gains stunned, +1 damage if you are bloodied. And then redirect attack, we've talked about that before. So, man, the problem with Defender is that it doesn't do a lot of defending. Like, sure, they get stunned, but that's once per game. The movement thing is neat, but you have to keep in mind you're still using the stats of the Ancient Construct. So you still only have the 14 defense, the 10 health, effectively 20, but 10 health. So that's not screaming at me Defender, right? A Defender to me has a way to boost their own defense, has a way to tie up opponents more, which I get. Shield charge, you move up there, you hit someone, now they're adjacent, now they have to deal with you. But he doesn't have opportunity attack. He doesn't have something that requires your opponent to stay nearby. He has redirect attacks. So I don't think I actually like the Defender much at all. I don't think it really fits the role for the Ancient Construct. So, that's interesting. I didn't think about it being kind of as bad as it is. So right now, if I were to rank the constructs and the variants and which ones I would do, I am probably leaning towards the Mage being arguably one of the better ones. Map manipulation is big. I think it's significant on a lot of scenarios. And the damage on that Orb Blast isn't bad. 2 to 4, +6 to hit. 2 damage, that's not bad. And then you don't have to expend XP to move characters away, but you can. So I would probably put the Mage up there. The thing to keep in mind is that whichever one you choose, they're going twice. So the 3 movement is absolutely necessary because effectively you're moving 6 a turn because you're taking 2 activations. And you can potentially do those activations back to back if you want. But if I say I was going to make a Mage version team, Akanke is going to be automatically on the team. So who are the other 2 that I'm using? Most likely for Mage, I am using probably Hengaku. I can't use Molly, so it's either Drom or Kithra. So I'm probably using Kithra at that point. So my team would be Kithra, Hengaku, Akanke, and then Mage Construct. And that's kind of my higher damage. Doesn't really have a lot of melee, right? You have, melee, like, in your face taking hits. Kithra could kind of take some hits, but she doesn't want to because she loses that extra range damage. And then you can maybe make a case for Monk taking out Drom increasing your speed, so you'd want Hengaku. So once again, if you're not playing Apothecary Construct, you're probably playing a Kankei. So Kankei, so what 2 would you put with Grappler? Hengaku to get the bonus, and maybe Kithra again. Because you can't play Drom. You could play Molly, which Molly might be okay in that instance. It really would depend on scenarios. So there are some variations I could see you doing with the construct. Once again, I think a Kankei and the original 4, perfectly viable. I think that's a fine team. I think the construct is interesting. I need to get a hand on one and see how it plays in person with the double activations, whether it could get tied up pretty easily. Because obviously if it gets stunned, and once again, most of the effects that are fading, it fades, at the end of their activation. Well, then his next activation up and he can do something. So you would really have to worry about certain characters that say, until your next turn, or, until your next activation. You'd have to be worried about that. But I think, I don't feel bad about Sellswords, solo Sellswords. Especially when we're getting 3 new characters soon, might muddy up the waters. The one thing I am happy about, though, is that looking at this, the Ancient Construct isn't overpowered. Being a storyline OP kit, prize or participation, you don't want this to be overpowered where someone has to get it and they don't have access to it. Now, I believe they said this might go on sale solo later down the road, potentially, but we know Akankei's in the expansion, so I feel better about Sellswords. If I were playing at Adepticon, which I might in some of the side tournaments or something, or if things don't work out with Heraclix, I might play in Adepticon Championship. I'm still probably playing Sellswords because I want to play something different. I don't want to play Harpers. I don't want to play Red Wizards. I'm not feeling Zentarum, and sorry, Many Arrows, still not feeling hot about that. So I might try going Rogue and play Sellswords, especially if we get the expansion. I'm probably playing that, but we'll see. So that's going to do it for this episode of Whiz. First off, I want to say thank you guys. I'm over 500 listens to the podcast on Spotify. That's only Spotify. So thank you guys for listening. We're close to over 50 episodes at this point, which I didn't know I would make it this far. I know I'm struggling here at the end, getting some episodes out, but thank you guys for listening. I will be back for sure on Friday to do our Hero Quiz Friday episode. There's a lot to talk about with Champion Clicks, and let's talk some Silver Age, some more Silver Age teams to build and to talk about. So I will see you guys on Friday. Have a fantastic day.